Well, I think, that it's very clear that the umbrella around everything that we could put into the pot of trauma understanding, treatment, and formulation is community.
Right.
There's something vital about understanding the role of community and benign, safe relationships and supporting anyone to heal from any traumatic injury through any method whatsoever. And the terrible tragedy, of course, is that when people are braced against reality, they don't gravitate towards community, they don't gravitate towards relationships, sometimes don't even gravitate towards love. And so it's a self-defeating problem often.
It's a complex issue because, see, we are communal creatures. But in our capitalistic society, we don't think about, oh, let's make sure that Benjamin is well connected with everybody and people around him. Let's see if we can sell him his fancy new car so I can make some money. So our culture is very individualistic, and medicine is very individualistic. And so our treatments are always, oh, you suffer from that disorder, and let me fix that disorder in you. But the reality is that we're all deeply interpersonal creatures. And as you well know, our brain is an interpersonal brain. Many of the functions of our brain are about connecting with each other and making connection with people. But that is not a critical core issue in how we generally deal with treatment. But for example, I'm on a bunch of social media with people who are actively treating COVID right now. I'm really interested in what their experience is like. When you treat COVID, you're part of a community that treats COVID. You're not alone. You're part of a team. And when you treat trauma, you need part of a team. It's not like you're messed up and let's forget about everybody else. These are always things about us as a member of a larger community.
Well, it's a little tragic understanding all of that for us at the moment when we look at our world and we look at how there appears to be an escalation of traumatic injuries and traumatic behavior and a breakdown in community and trust. And I know you're very vocal, particularly sitting as you are in America, about wanting to reverse that. And I think there's so many problems and so many ideas about solutions, but for me, number one is people can begin to start regulating themselves and therefore regulating better with others and therefore building stronger, safer communities and therefore so on and so forth, and you hope that there'll be better nations. So look, this is an amazingly quick tour around the legacy of your incredible life's work. And we have some questions. I hope we can transition now. I can ask you a few questions from our audience.
Can I say something? I don't see this as my work. I think about all the people I've worked with. Judy Herman, Roger Pittman, Frank Putnam, Robert Pinus, you, Stephen Porter. I just can give you name after name. We have been a community of seekers. And I'm just one voice in the middle of this large community,
Very true. And I find personally, I'm more nourished by this community than any other community I know. It's a profound connection when people are profoundly driven by mission and purpose. And it's a beautiful thing. I'm grateful that you invited me into your tent. It's been a wonderful experience. So we have some questions. Let's see how we get on. Here's a good. What would you advise when trying to learn to love your body after a traumatic experience?
It's a very good question. Really, fantastic question. It's a real question. So what I think touch is an essential part. It's interesting. I recently read something by Bowlby and Winnicott, and they both talk about touch. And they go, they're British upper class guys who talk about touch. So a contradiction. But they both got it. That touch is an essential part of feeling safe in your body. And of course, in our field, Nobody's talking about touch, and no clinic that I know, maybe Kieran House does, has. I think you guys have body workers there, but it's very unusual actually. What's interesting is that we got into some money this past year, and what is the Trauma Research Foundation spending its money on to study the neuroscience of touch at the time of COVID when nobody's touching anybody. But how do you feel safe in your body? The same way that your mom makes you feel safe in your body by rocking you and holding you and singing to you and getting that rhythm going. I think that's a very, very fundamental part of feeling safe in your body. And for God's sake, find somebody out there who is a real good body worker. And I was just talking with somebody about it, and what's striking to me is that in our field, the more immobile people become, the more respectable you are. Like, who has respect for body workers? You know, they're low people they're talking to. And what is it about us and our culture that disdains people who touch people and love people who vigorously create formulas that are disembodied?
Well, we live in the age of reason, not in the age of body.
Aren't we reasonable, right? Like, for me, it's interesting that we have this severely damaged mentally ill president in America, and in these 4 years, the psychology of reasonableness has become ever more powerful, pretending like people are reasonable human beings, where all around us we see insanity on the show, you know, like wow.
Okay, so as you're saying, it's important to try to find and access safe touch. Important distinction between just touch in general and touch that feels safe and nourishing to the system. The system relaxes into it rather than braces against it. Another question is, if you've forgotten your trauma, can you look at the physical symptoms to help figure out what happened to you? And I would add to that, is it even necessary to figure out?
I'm sure you have an answer for that also, Benjamin. But people don't start off remembering their trauma. I don't think anybody has ever come to my office and say, I'm a 42-year-old lawyer and I want to deal with getting molested by my uncle at age 4. No, people come to my office because they say I'm a very successful something or another, but whenever I get close to somebody, I so interpret them and I freak out and I cannot maintain a relationship. And so it is not the story of the past that drives people crazy, it's the imprint of the past in people's bodies that gets relived. And so the question, do you need language for where it comes from? I don't think so. I mean, this is something I've been mulling over for a long time, and depending on when you catch me, sometimes I say absolutely it's necessary, sometimes I say absolutely not necessary, and the final word isn't there. But the issue is that your body keeps the score, and so your body will play out the story of your trauma. And is it necessary to find the words, the circumstances? It's probably helpful to know where it starts. But is it absolutely necessary? Probably not.